So let me welcome all of you to this webinar. It is a webinar about composting, and it's called Sharing the Stories from Mothers Out Front. We wanted it to be just that because as the Healthy Soil Livable Future Action Group that now exists within the statewide Mothers Out Front, we see our role in many ways as both educators, but also conveners to begin conversations across chapters, among chapters, between chapters on a lot of these issues that chapters to some degree or another are already engaged in. And my goodness, they can share their knowledge, help others, learn from each other. And that's what we're going to start the process with, at least with composting today. We're going to be doing similar webinars on other issues having to do with pollinating gardens, pollinator gardens, native plants, transforming lawns to meadows, creating Miyawaki forests. There are going to be a lot of these that are going to be coming up in the future where we can both learn from the speakers, but also begin to find out and put faces with names and begin to bring ourselves together. So why are we starting with composting? Well, Healthy Soil Livable Future exists because we are really trying to relate the processes, the natural solution processes that relate to climate, because after all, climate is at the core of what Mothers Out Front does. But what hasn't been part of that equation, which now is through this group in Massachusetts, is the part about the carbon drawdown. That's what we're really beginning to address. And we're doing it through four principles that undergird our work. One is in doing it with environmental justice in mind, doing it with the restoration of soil health, doing it through the lens of food justice as we look at ways to bring food more locally to people and to be able to grow it in more healthy ways. This very much has to do with the topic at hand of compost. And lastly, looking at the health of people. That has to do with a lot of our work that I hope many of you will continue to engage in with us in terms of building our people power to go up against the pesticide industry, which is really doing a lot to make our food unhealthy, our soils unhealthy, and us unhealthy. So with that, let's get into why we have made compost our first outing. Let's start with a couple of facts about it. We waste 40% of our food. Now, that's not we sitting in this conversation. I think we in this conversation are probably more aware of this and probably do not waste that much. But we as a people, we as a society waste 40% of our food, meaning we don't eat it. And so we toss it away, and it often ends up in landfills, and out of those landfills comes methane, which, as we know, is a more powerful instigator of greenhouse gases than the carbon dioxide that we're very focused on to a large extent with our emissions issue. So it becomes a powerful climate changing gas, and it seeps into the atmosphere. So, just think about this. If food waste on its own were a nation, if it were a nation globally, it would be the third largest emitter of greenhouse gases after two countries, China and the United States. Okay? That is really a powerful thought. Okay? A food waste nation. It would be the third in the world in terms of emissions. So it's very much related to composting and to our topic at hand with food waste. So if we were able to reduce our food waste to zero, we could eliminate as much as 11% of the greenhouse gas emissions that are currently going up. So those are just some kind of facts to put an overview on this. So what happens when we actually make good, rich compost out of our food waste? Well, it starts off by improving both the biological, the chemical, and the physical characteristics of soil. It protects against soil desertification and soil erosion. It helps plants to grow. It increases the resilience of soil to floods and droughts, which we're hearing so much about today. It does this in many ways by increasing the soil fertility. And it reduces the need for those chemicals that we're talking about that are so often put on land in order to, get rid of so many things that if you made the soil healthy, you wouldn't have to get rid of. It improves the water retention, improves the soil structure, and it adds humus, keeping the soil particles stuck together. And so in that soil that we're making with the compost, we're able to pull down and store the carbon that we need to take out of the atmosphere. So lastly, just as a kind of another sort of fact before I open this up to Amy, is that compost helps to reduce the stormwater runoff. Why? Because it is so dense that it can hold 5 times its weight in water. So if you had these healthy soils, this composted soil, this healthy nutrient soil, if you had that in the Midwest, instead of what you have with the industrial farmland with the chemicals on it and the soil depleted, you wouldn't see the enormous runoffs that you saw last year with the immense storms and rainstorms that you had. So compost does these amazing things. So if you ask why are we focusing on compost, that's just a few of the reasons. We're going to learn some other reasons from our community activists. So I'm going to start off with a member of our Healthy Soils Livable Future group, wonderful member, and she's going to tell you about what she's been doing as a member of that group, but also what she's doing in her local chapter up on the North Shore in Ipswich. And that's Amy Henderson. So Amy, why don't you begin?
And I'm just going to interrupt and ask people to mute themselves, please. So if you're not muted, please do that so we can eliminate any background noise.
Thank you. And just one more thing, Amy, before you begin, if you do have questions, please write them in the chat, where we're also collecting a number of very valuable links that you may want to go to for information following this webinar. So use that chat as well to put your questions in, please. And now I'm going to mute, and Amy, you take over.
You know what? Let me ask a quick favor. Can we, I'm going to have to sign off and sign back on my computer. My husband had this brilliant idea of me using his computer because it would be quieter up here. But lo and behold, I cannot share my screen. And I know I can do it from my computer downstairs. So Melissa, is it possible for maybe
Ethan's going to go first, and then
Ethan can go first, and I will sign right back on and from my computer downstairs after I kill my husband. Okay.
We'll let Ethan
be right back.
Yep. Okay. So Ethan, well, you know what? We are flexible. So here we go. All right, Ethan, take us.
Okay, sure. Thanks. And Melissa, you want about 8 minutes, right? Is that the goal?
Yep. Yep.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me. I live in East Boston, and Melissa wanted to have me share a little bit about what I'm doing up here as an ally, and maybe I'm going to also share some digital tools, and maybe those would be things that could be helpful for other chapters. So, I came to this work out of a interest in public art, as maybe many of you saw Kiss the Ground and got really inspired about healthy soils and living soil. So this is one of the ways I sort of approach this is a park in East Boston, if everybody can see the picture, that is very underutilized with really kind of poor soil. And I got excited about maybe a community effort to improve the soil here. So that is kind of the goal, the long-term goal for what I'm doing, collecting compost. And so these are some more pictures of it in East Boston. It's very sandy. And it kind of inspired by, once you start making soil, maybe there's a lot of ways to use soil within the community, whether that's, tree beds or just pots outside. Here in East Boston, we have a very low percentage of canopy cover. We're a bit of a heat island. So that's another reason why it's important here. So I'm gonna, I don't know if you guys are on Clubhouse, but this is a digital social networking, audio only network, which I discovered this winter during the pandemic. And I encourage you to check it out because there are lots of different people that are interested in gardening and composting. And so it was actually through being a part of Clubhouse, and I'll put the link in the chat at the end, that I discovered this site called MakeSoil. And MakeSoil is a way that you can kind of say that you're collecting compost, and you can encourage other people in your neighborhood to bring their compost over or their materials for compost. So I actually started very simply thinking about, I'm just going to collect my coffee and my coffee grounds and my eggshells. I didn't, I was worried about something that would get too big. And I was just kind of amazed myself how satisfying that was and how much after a couple of weeks that produced. So the way that this works is you say that you're collecting and they give you some tools to advertise what you're doing. So I am in an apartment in East Boston. I don't have a front yard. I don't have a backyard, but I'm also somebody who's just likes to push boundaries a little bit. So what's very cool is so that's my house is there on the right there, and when you join the MakeSoil, you can print out these signs that they make for you that have a QR code that allow people to scan it and then join your soil site. So this is literally for people passing by. It doesn't necessarily need to work like that everywhere. Other people can email friends or neighbors, but I think one of the things that I've heard about composting or not composting in general, recycling, is that when it's a huge city government program, I think even myself am guilty of not cleaning my plastics as well as I would if I knew somebody down the street was responsible for it. So I think that there's something about these really small scales, which kind of show what can be done, and also kind of create a little bit of accountability, I would say. So I started with this 5-gallon bucket in front of my house and this sign on my wall. And I very quickly got people that were interested and I started with just, again, just breakfast waste, I called it. So here's my little bucket, and the soil site allows people to you can sort of update everybody on your team, and so this is a little bit of the chat that's going on. I'm telling them when I'm picking things up but I didn't even have a place to process it, as I started. But what I did was I connected with Channel Fish Company, which is located in Eagle Square, which is right down the street. They had a hoop house, and they had some composting bins, and so I arranged to start bringing what we collected there. This is Ryan and Tio, the folks that are taking care of that part of the process. I then sort of felt like maybe we could move up in capacity, and Melissa and Sonia from Mothers Out Front in East Boston invited me to table at one of their one of the events that they had. So I sort of came out with the barrels, and I found on Facebook, I think I even bought it for cheaper than this, like these $10 rainwater collection barrels. So that got us a little more capacity. And I have a few of these. I think I have like 4 or 5 of them. So I could share them with people if they want to use it. The capacity over at Channel Fish increased. They got a vermiculture worm bin there that's on the right, which apparently can process up to 4 gallons per day. So that's a lot of waste. They got another tumbler that was donated. So they increased their capacity, and I felt like I could start collecting just uncooked vegetables as well as we're moving into summer. So then I moved on so we have got the bigger bin next to my house. This is how it fits in the back of my car. And I just run it down the street. Again, once every 2 weeks. It's not tons, but it's something, and it's symbolic. And and the neighborhood sees what's going on. And then the other, as we talk about digital tools, the other thing that I'm just beginning to learn about is some of these cryptocurrencies and ways that you can use. There's a coin called Seeds, which is a way to support and reward regenerative projects. So I'm just kind of learning about this, but I'm excited by the idea of maybe involving that as I learn more about it. And so I guess finally here are sort of the links of and I'll put these in the chat of what, my email address, and then Clubhouse, which I think is a resource, MakeSoil, which I think is a fun thing to try. And then, as I learn more about how we can collectively support projects like this, Seeds may be something I'm going to explore over the summer. So I'm totally open to help with what I'm doing in East Boston. I'm happy to, I've connected with the MakeSoil team. And so if we want to do more, if MakeSoil is an interesting platform for any small scale groups, we can probably connect with those organizers and try to see if there are ways that they can better support us. But that's my presentation for now. Oops.
Well, that was really a high bar that you set there, Ethan.
Well, thank you so much.
How inspiring is that? I mean, to see that how you grew it. That's the thing that's amazing, is how you started something and then each of the steps along the way and how you grew it. And we're going to just keep track of you because we have a sense that this is going to continue to grow. I'm going to just say that one of the questions that I'm going to put in for you to think about later is, at what stage do you think you're going to be ready to put a compost layer in that circle that you started us with? So we'll come to that at the end. But I see that Amy has successfully gotten onto her old computer. I can see the old walls behind her.
The familiar walls. Yes. All right. Let me try this again.
So, thank you. Thank you for putting that information in the chat. I hope everyone can find that information and take it themselves because it's incredibly valuable for all of us. So Amy, take us away.
Okay. Oh, good. This looks right. I know it was strange. Everything was sort of cautioned out. Okay. Here we go. Oh, I hope you all can see half of it. Here we again, I'm Amy Henderson. I'm a Beverly resident. I'm a member of both the Healthy Soil Livable Future Action Group and the Ipswich chapter, because there are no Beverly chapters. This past November, I saw a movie that really changed the way I thought about soil, land, and climate change, and that was Kiss the Ground. And I hope that all of you have seen it, and if not, you should. And for me, what really happened was, while I've always been interested in sort of semi-compliant with environmental issues, even when I was young, my mom spearheaded the first recycling effort in my town. I had never really connected the soil with carbon sequestration. So one thing led to another. I found out about Mothers Out Front. I found out about the Healthy Soil Study Group. And even though I'd never heard about Mothers Out Front, I quickly realized in joining the Healthy Soil group that here was this incredibly smart group talented group, primarily of women, but of interested individuals who are interested in the intersection of health of our soil, environmental justice, and the health of our planet. And here I just want to take a quick moment to shout out to Janet Powers, who does the most phenomenal artwork and has been incredibly generous in sharing her artwork with our group. And the center image here is one of her amazing creations. So I became more involved in the Healthy Soil group, and the group became an action group at the March State Assembly. And then I joined the Education, Outreach, and Communication team, which led to the Compost Toolkit. So one of the goals of the Healthy Soil Livable Future Action Group is to educate about what constitutes healthy, vibrant, carbon sequestering, alive soil. And one of the ways we're doing that is putting together toolkits, the first of which is a composting toolkit. And since this is our first toolkit, we're still experimenting a bit with trying to come up with the best, most user-friendly presentation. But the general goals of the toolkit, and this is primarily from my perspective, but I think I speak for everyone. The goal is to inspire people to compost and to inspire more people to compost. We also want to create a roadmap for any Mothers Out Front chapter that wants to implement or expand an existing compost program in their town. And we want to be sort of a one-stop shopping place to provide information, anecdotes, data, flyers, etc. So no Mothers Out Front chapter needs to reinvent the wheel if they want to start a composting program. The composting toolkit also, we want to consider and offer solutions or suggestions for addressing issues of equal access to composting. And then we would like to create a culture of composting across Massachusetts, leading to composting becoming as ubiquitous and common as recycling, or maybe even more so. So this is a little bit from the landing page as it currently exists of the composting toolkit. And as I said, we're still looking for sort of a more user-friendly format. And so this is still very functional, data-driven. But again, it's intended to be a sort of clearinghouse for information from Mothers Out Front for getting a composting campaign off the ground. And there are links to 1 to 2 page informational flyers that can be adopted for your own chapter. The one here on the right that starts with soil cycle, that was put together by the fabulous leader of the Ipswich chapter, Sarah Simon, who's an environmental engineer. And there are also links here to a bunch of different towns in Massachusetts, and then some inspiration from other cities and states. And while looking at a list of links might be a little bit overwhelming, going through it, you realize it's not really that much, and each town has a slightly different story and a slightly different approach to starting composting or increasing composting. And personally, I find it really useful because I think, well, if something doesn't work for my town, maybe something else that someone else has already tried might work. And I know the limits of my own creativity, and I'm always just floored by what other people do and take great inspiration from some of the other chapters. Let's see. And then we also have a bunch of information about the different types of composting with live links. I hope this isn't too cut off, but there's a link to, if you want to start backyard composting, and we have a 1 to 2 page sort of cheat sheet on how to do that. There's a link to worm composting, the vermicomposting. And then I talk a little bit about curbside composting, which in its various permutations, like having households contract with independent curbside compost pickup services like Black Earth Compost, or in the case of Manchester by the Sea, the town pays for Black Earth Compost to pick up for whichever, any household that wants to participate. And then one thing I do caution against, getting the cities completely involved is you don't want the compost to be sent to a solid waste facility. I know everybody's heard a lot about forever chemicals and PFAS lately, and nobody wants the resulting compost pellets to contain forever chemicals and to put those in your garden. So we also have a short resources list that contains links to video clips, movies, books, blogs, projects with kids. I particularly love, obviously, Kiss the Ground movie, The Biggest Little Farm, which is actually also available on Amazon for like $3.99. And then there's a link to the compost story. And I defy anybody to see this little YouTube video, the compost story that was put out by the people who put out Kiss the Ground, and not be inspired to compost. I put links in the chat, but if you join late, I'll put the links back in the chat. And Melissa will have them later. So ultimately, I think we'd all like to end up here, like the town of Hamilton. The question is, how long does it take to get there, and what are necessary steps along the way? I mean, none of us can go to our towns and say, you must mandate composting now. towns are reeling from the pandemic, and it's something that I think people have to learn about organically. And this woman, Gradle Clark, certainly was working on it with the town of Hamilton for 20 years. So before I sort of shift over and talk a little bit about what the Ipswich chapter's done, I'd like to leave you with a couple questions to ponder. One of which is, assuming that near 100% composting compliance is sort of the big overarching goal, how do you bring people along and make it as easy and effortless as possible? How do you provide for people who cannot afford curbside pickup? And I think Ethan's presentation is super inspirational. Is Project Oscar a good option? Do we strive for a town-by-town mandate, or do we want to start to petition a top-down approach from the state? The state already requires composting for institutions that produce, I think it's a ton a week, and they're dropping it to half a ton, I believe, next year. But at some point it would be great if it was as ubiquitous as recycling, if not more so. So I'm going to put on a different hat right now as a member of the Ipswich chapter and talk a little bit about our campaign. We were inspired, of course, by Healthy Soil, Livable Future becoming an action group, and what happened in the town of Hamilton, and our general interest in our chapter with the health of the soil. So we decided to launch a campaign called Soil Cycle, and the Ipswich chapter primarily has Ipswich residents, but there's a woman from Manchester by the sea, and I'm, of course, from Beverly. So for those of you who are not intimately familiar with the North Shore, here's a quick map. You might only think of the North Shore for things like Cranes Beach, Rockport Granite, the Gloucester Fishermen over here, motive number one. But Ipswich is also home to Appleton Farms, which was established in 1636 and is one of the oldest continuously operating farms in the United States. Not quite so old are the two guys who started Black Earth Compost 10 years ago in Gloucester. So many of the communities up here were early adopters of curbside composting through the North Shore. My town of Beverly started a pilot curbside compost program in 2015. And Ipswich residents can sign up for pickup with Black Earth Compost, although it's processed by a different entity. And the town of Manchester now pays for any household in Manchester that wants to participate in curbside composting. So Black Earth has a bit of a monopoly on curbside composting on the North Shore, although there are other organizations that will do it, but the fees are slightly higher. Yes, I've got it. Yeah, 2 minutes?
Roughly,
yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I'll be quick. So to start, when we started looking at it for our campaign, we looked at what percentage of households were composting. And I'll skip a little bit of this, but suffice to say that since the start of our campaign, Beverly's increased by over 100 households. Ipswich has increased by over 60 households. I'm waiting to get data from Manchester, but they've increased as well. Our campaign had multiple action items. We identified allies such as waste reduction committees, sustainability committees, green teams, other environmental groups. We prepared a webinar and we've presented a couple of times, including with the Essex National Heritage Group. We've had tabling events at hardware stores, garden clubs, public homecoming. We're doing homecoming later this summer, farmers markets, not entirely paperless, but we've been using QR codes as well. And then we created an online pledge to start composting, encouraging people to sign the pledge to start composting. And if they already compost, to encourage 5 friends to compost. We did some one-on-one emails, particularly on Earth Day when Black Earth Compost was offering 20% off. And I think I got 15 people to sign up that day. I think some people just wanted to hear me stop bothering them. And then we've been advocating for public drop sites like Project Oscar. Salem has one. Newton has a pilot program. And I just learned last night, I'm so excited that Beverly is actually going to start a public drop site for Beverly residents in the next month. So yay. And then at the end of the day, one of the things that we've all found is that one-on-one conversations are key. So, you know, countering questions like, isn't composting gross and smelly? And what about animals getting into it? And my greatest successes in getting people to join have been through one-on-one conversations. So let me know if you want any information from what Ipswich has done, but all of it is also in the Compost Toolkit. That's about it.
Amy, you fit a lot into a short time and you had a really double goal there. One was to talk to us about the toolkit and our coming attractions, and the other Ipswich, and you did a fantastic job weaving the two together. So we hadn't planned it this way, but it just turns out that we are going to move from city, East Boston, to sort of towns and a region of Ipswich and sort of the North Shore. And we're going to land back in a city with Lily. Lily, are you ready for us?
I actually having still my computer's not working.
Drop that idea. We're going to go to Emily in Lincoln.
Yes.
So we're going to nest the two towns between the two cities. Either way, we've got a pattern here. So Emily, why don't you take us into Lincoln, and we'll come back to Lily when we finish with you. So let's take about maybe 8 minutes if you can to take us to Lincoln. Okay. And you tell me when you want the visuals up that I have for you.
Okay, I will. Thanks, Melissa. That's great. I'll probably only use the first one. I just want to say I'm Emily Hazlitt from Lincoln, and I'm so grateful to be able to talk to you all about composting. I would say if Melissa had asked me to talk about something else, I might have declined, but composting is something near and dear to my heart. So I'm very happy to talk about it. And Ethan and Amy, very inspired by what you're doing. And yeah, it's just great to hear about the community building that happens and how it, as we were saying earlier, like mycelium, just keeps growing and building. And I think it has huge positive impacts and it will have in the future. So Trish O'Hagan is on this call with me, and she is the reason I am part of Mothers Out Front. She invited me to join, and Stacy Montoya as well, about 3 years ago. And I'm so glad I have. I love being a part, or maybe 4 years now, being a part of Mothers Out Front, because it enables me to be the kind of activist I want to be. And I appreciate that a lot. What I'm going to talk about are kind of 3 important pieces from our work here in Lincoln, and especially around composting. I'm going to talk about the importance of building relationships, the education piece, the community building, and the positive energy and vision that have kind of been the underlying part of all of it. When we started in Lincoln, thanks to the guidance of Mothers Out Front, the greater Mothers Out Front, we focused on gas leaks, and we attracted tons of interest from many residents, mothers, other women, as well as were able to start a relationship with the town. That means the town administrator, as well as the Department of Public Works and the fire chief, none of whom I had ever known before. And I sensed, because we weren't a town committee, we were able to be kind of bold. So we knit scarves to wrap around the trees that were suffering from the gas leaks. Everybody was very interested, and the town administration appreciated our inviting them to different meetings, our reaching out to National Grid. And that was the foundation for why I think the composting has worked and other things that we've done in town. Another member of Mothers Out Front, Bedford, reached out to us, I guess about 3 years ago in the summer, and just said, are you all interested in looking into starting a townwide composting program in Lincoln? We're doing it here in Bedford. What was different, and that was of course near and dear to my heart, and I raised my hand like, yes, I would love to do that. I'm a lifelong gardener and I love everything about the soil. My gardens don't look beautiful, but I love the process of gardening. So I have vermicompost. I've been composting for years, and yeah, I'm a big fan. So what would be different for us versus Bedford is that we do not have a townwide trash pickup. We have a very social transfer station where people tend to gather, and it's a important part of our town culture. And we wrote a proposal to the town administrator. It was just a simple one pager, which I'm happy to share with anyone or put on the toolkit, expecting to have to present to the town, to the select board, to present to do a survey in town to see if people were interested, to have focus groups, and it seemed worth it. And it took longer than usual for the town administrator to get back to us. And the reason was that he had reached out to the head of the Department of Public Works to see if he would do a study to see what this would mean for our town. And there was a lot of synchronicity and serendipity, and that the new assistant head of the Department of Public Works, her son works in Acton, and they have a very active townwide composting program, and he works there. So by the time they reached back to us, they said, yes, we want to do a pilot program based on what they'd learned from what was going on in Acton. And that was quite a gift. I did not expect that at all. And they said, will you please do the education piece with us? And we said, sure, because that's what we like to do. We're good at we're community building and community outreach. So I put together Melissa, if you could just scroll to the top, or we put together this flyer. And we also made great use of our listserv. It's called Lincoln Talk, which is a great way to reach people. So we posted this on Lincoln Talk, lots of fanfare and enthusiasm. We tabled, and we just got the word out that way. It was a big effort. Let me think. We contracted with Black Earth, a favorite company of mine, and I love all that they're doing in their mission. And we started on October 1st of 2019, and it went quite well. We gave, I think it was important to have some giveaways. We gave away the compostable bags, and the town bought these plastic bins for, reusable bins for about 10, and they were selling them for about $10 each. What was funny about being at the dump, and it's kind of something about Lincoln residents, is everyone would walk by and say, I don't need to talk to you, I already compost. And so then we'd say, wait. And Melissa, if you could just quickly share my second flyer. We would then hand them the list of what Black Earth accepts, which is so much more than what the average home composter, and don't worry if you can't, Melissa, it doesn't matter, what the home compost, here it is. Yeah, so we adapted what Black Earth's list is. And when people saw that they could do lobster shells and fish bones and chicken bones and so much, as you can see, that you would never put in your home compost, then they would kind of step back, walk back, turn around and start talking. And they would take a few bags. And so we started with 4 bins outside. That didn't work well in Lincoln because we did have some animal problems. And next thing I knew, the Department of Public Works had provided a sweet little shed with the 4 bins inside. And we then graduated to 6 bins because it was so popular. We had our transfer station is open Wednesdays and Saturdays. So we then went to 2 pickups with Black Earth Wednesday morning before the transfer station opens, and then Saturday as well. And it just became part of what Lincoln's values are. It's a big part of what we all care about. And I think, let me think what else I want to say. I think that another thing that was very important to us as Mothers Out Front in the education was to then share the closed loop aspect of what is so important about composting, so that people would understand what's happening with their food waste. There are a lot of gardeners here. So we asked Cobb Farm if they would host 10 yards of bulk Black Earth compost early in the spring. So, and again, we posted on our listserv so that people could go, they could bring their own 5-gallon buckets or used, soil bags. The point was they couldn't use brand new trash bags because of zero waste. We're trying to get away from all the plastic, and they could come purchase a 5-gallon bucket of compost for a beautiful compost, some of which contained their food waste, for about $4, which was very affordable. And so that was a big hit, also because there are community gardeners gardening plots at Cobb Farm. So that was kind of a lovely way to integrate what's going on at the transfer station with another important component of Lincoln, and which is Cobb Farm. A bump in the road that I wanted to share. Everything was going on along so beautifully until, I don't know, we don't even know what happened. I think there was a holiday and we missed a pickup. And so everything became full. And next thing I knew, Black Earth had rejected one of our deliveries. And the only reason I'm sharing this with you is because it was a shock, because then it was sort of like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do with all of this? And I think what was most heartwarming was that on Lincoln Talk, a Lincoln resident posted, does anyone know why we were rejected? This is awful, you know, and it turned out we were sort of at risk. I mean, it wasn't that we were really at risk of their canceling our contract, but it became clear that this was something that a lot of people in town really cared about. And that was really a wonderful thing to see, that it had become, it fit in with community values. And at the same time, I forgot to mention that the town said they were going to just have a 6-month pilot, but what they actually were so pleased with how well it was going that they just kept the program going. It has not reduced our cost of municipal solid waste disposal significantly. We're breaking even and a little bit more. But what was fantastic is the town was like, it doesn't matter. We will pay for this, for all the goodwill, for we know it's the right thing to do. And so that has worked really well. And as of last week, we graduated from our little shed to a huge used container that the DPW painted green. And it's, yeah, people are excited. I do have to go check once in a while because I'm so committed to the program that I have become a compost dumpster diver, and I make sure to take out any plastic that might be there. I have my little hazmat suit of a raincoat and awful gloves, and it's worth it because I don't want Black Earth to reject our compost, and it's such an important program. So last year in 2020, we kept 42 tons of solid waste and food waste out of our municipal solid waste that goes to the incinerator. And what we're trying to stress to people are so many things, many of which Melissa already touched upon, but the environmental justice aspect is so huge because all of our waste is burned, is incinerated in North Andover. So anything we can keep out of there is key. And then there's the full closed loop about what we're doing with the soils here in Lincoln and what people are putting in their gardens. And Black Earth is so fantastic because they don't mix it with sludge and they don't accept grass clippings and things like that. So we are working with Black Earth. How much time do I have, Melissa? Okay.
You're muted, Melissa.
It's okay. To segue, thank you.
You have about 0 left, but I think.
Okay, I just want to say quickly, we're working with Black Earth to start composting in our new net zero school that's being built. And I think because the ethic of composting is already so deep in our town, it is going to be successful. And just a quick story, when kids enter kindergarten in Lincoln, they are told they're used to composting and they're told they have to throw everything away, and it's unlearning what they already know. So, you know, stay tuned for how the composting is going to go in our school. I think it's going to work well.
Well, that is exciting that you're moving into the schools. And as a Cambridge parent, I will say to you, Cambridge Public School parent, that the composting program that's gone on in the schools and has been built over about a dozen years to where it's happening in all the schools now, takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of takes a lot of parent volunteers going into the school and helping to teach kids how to do the composting right, how to put the right things in the right bins. But there, I have to say, a terrific network of volunteers who have done that with great eagerness, and it's all you know, going well. If only it weren't turned into sludge. Anyway, we'll talk about that another time. Lily is experiencing some technical challenges, but she is a warrior. And she is going to, without her visuals, take us on a little tour in Brookline, where we're going to close our talks and then open it up to a bit of question and answer. So Lily, why don't you do what you can do by telling us some stories, and then we'll go to Q&A.
Okay, I apologize, everybody. I had PowerPoints ready and some notes and so forth, and I relying technical, and now with the computer just kind of scrolling around, I am pretty much doing it in the void with nothing. So
Okay.
Emily, in your respect with the school, Brookline strong point is the schools. We've been doing it for many, many years. Dean Cody, who is the queen of compost in Brookline and Mothers Out Front, has been the forerunning woman doing this. We started with some of the smaller schools in Brookline, Pierce and Lincoln, and the new Ridley. COVID had made us have several setbacks, but the kids were really up and going. Black Earth was working with the schools, collecting all our waste. We had high school students actually measuring the tonnage and the waste, and we have records, which I have wanted to share with you, and what they have deferred from trash. Unfortunately, because of COVID this year, Black Earth has not been working with our schools, which has been a shame, because we see what is going into trash and not composted. It's killing us. Mothers Out Front is working with Sasha Palmer, the director of food services. Our goal was to help her turn her kitchen into a farm to table sustainability with dishwashers, growing her own vegetables, getting everything back into the simpler ways. But because of COVID, we're all individually wrapping things, ordering things, coming in bulk containers. It's just terrible. So everything is set back. Currently in Brookline, we have about 12,050 subscribers, which is not a lot compared to Newton and other towns. Our biggest hindrance is we have a lot of apartment buildings and condos, and they are not part of the public collection service. They have private haulers, and we have to figure a way how to go about that, because these are all different people, and tenants and residents are knowledgeable about composting, but they are very limited on what they can do on their premises. We had a drop-off, one drop-off in Brookline that was closed because the teen center was closed, and I guess it was neglected. So therefore, the town kind of mandated to be closed, and we are working to have that restarted again. So the school is pretty much our strong points. We figured that if we can get the kids to be knowledgeable of what they're doing, go home, share it with the parents, and hopefully it's starting from the ground up. I mean, there are a lot of people subscribing, but it's just not enough for us. What else can I think of my memory? Can you guys hold on for a second? Hold on for a second. Can you just open the draft there? I'll still scrolling. I have no luck. My computer is up, but I can't open my drafts. What else can I say?
Lily, if you send me a copy of your slides, I can put them into the notes.
Oh, okay.
When I send the notes out and people can see those. So
okay, I also have notes of what I was going to talk about today as well too. So
if you want to send those, we can put those out as well. Let's open up for questions, and I think maybe people who have questions about how to do it in school will turn to you, Lily, as an expert in that, and we'll see what other questions come up. So if anyone has questions, Gretchen, are you raising your hand for a question? No, you're just moving your hand. Okay, does anyone have a particular question that they want to ask any or all of the speakers to weigh in on? All right, don't be the last here to ask a question. All right, well, I will ask a question then. Let's think about how and I'd love ideas with this question. We've seen a number of different kind of approaches in towns and different places where towns are in doing this. How do people here think we can bring this knowledge out more widely to other chapters in Mothers Out Front, and perhaps create a network in which information can be more easily shared. Do we have anyone who has some thoughts on ways to do that? Ethan has put together some technological tools on sharing in his neighborhood, but does anyone have ways? Because that's our objective, is to be able to figure out how we take this information that's so rich out to a wider group of people. Suzanne.
Just so you know, the Boston chapters, as I'm a member of the West Roxbury chapter, and there are 4 Boston chapters, and also I'm blanking out on what the other groups are, but there's been an effort to work with Laura Davis at Mothers Out Front to come up with a website that would share information on what the Boston chapters had conceived of as a green living tour. But it totally connects to this effort. And so, you know, I think talking to Laura would be a really good idea, so that, you know, they're setting up something. It's just in the preliminary stages. So that now's the perfect time to try to coordinate those efforts.
Okay, that's a great suggestion. Thank you. Anyone else have any other suggestions? Madeline, I always see you typing away, and I always know that when you're typing, there's a lot going through your head. So is there anything you'd like to share with us from the Western Massachusetts realm of things in terms of either the sharing process or kind of what's happening out there?
Well, I was just private messaging Amy.
Okay. You want to share it with us more widely, or was it a
I don't know if this is the right time. I'm in over my head trying to help with the toolkit. I'm not a graphic designer.
Right.
So Amy, is this the right time to see if anyone can pitch in that way?
I think it would be great. And maybe what we need to do is go to Laura Davis and say, we have all of this information. We have this wealth of knowledge within our chapters that needs a central clearinghouse spot. And the way I put together the Compost Toolkit has a ton of information, but it is not perhaps the most user-friendly thing. I think this webinar should be in the Compost Toolkit. And I think if Laura, and maybe we need to coordinate with Laura, if she has some suggestions for how best to transfer it into an accessible, user-friendly living document that can be updated with news from, you know, Ipswich has met its goal with its new, you know, 25% of more households are now using black earth compost, or, you know, look at what Brookline's done with its zero waste and in the schools and with composting. You know, even to have like, I think that Laura Davis might be the best person, but it would be, I don't know if anyone has graphic like design ideas and would want to help Madeline May sort of tighten up the toolkit. That would be great too. We're looking for volunteers.
Great. Suzanne, to that.
Yeah, just, I mean, I think that's a really good idea, but also just to note that the Massachusetts is trying to put together a statewide communications team. And they're looking for people with all of these skill sets, right? You know, so it may well be that there's someone, you know, in that communication team, which is still forming. I don't really know. I just know because I'm on the mall, you know, that's happening. But there may well be people with that kind of skill, the graphic designer skill, you know, those things, because someone who's attracted to a communications team, you know, I would think would have some of those skills. So again, Laura is the point person for these kinds of things. And I'm sure, you know, those things can be connected.
Great. All right. Well, you know, it's really wonderful to kind of think about closing down with ideas about how we can make this a more rich and broad experience for Mothers Out Front, because that was really the goal of this webinar. And I think on the webinar, we've really been reminded of how much knowledge we have ourselves to share within our group, and how that can enrich the experience. I mean, here's Emily thinking about getting into the schools. And here's Lily, where the schools have been their main kind of focus. And so there certainly could be some learning and synergy between the two of them that wouldn't have necessarily existed before. So I guess what I can do as we close down this webinar is to urge you to stay tuned to Healthy Soil, Livable Future. I have put into the chat, which I am going to save, I've put into that the address, the email address, where all you have to do is type that address in, send it to us with your question or just saying, I want to be more attached to you. Please put me on your alert list. And we can continue to be in touch in this way. Before I close it out, we've got about 3 or 4 minutes. Anyone have any other questions or comments or ideas to share with this group at this moment? I feel like, you know, one of the pastors at a wedding, if anyone has any reason to think that these two should not be together, speak now or forever hold your peace. So we will then end this on that note and just urge all of you to stay tuned and thank you for participating and be in touch with us. Don't be strangers. And it's great to see you today and take care. Okay. All best. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.